This podcast is a production of the Brickyard Network, an extension of the Archie Bray Foundation for the Ceramic Arts. To find out more about our lineup of ceramic podcasts, visit brickyardnetwork.org.
Hey, this is Erin with Cornell Studio Supply, located in the Gem City of Dayton, Ohio. As a proud sponsor of this episode and the Brickyard Network, we are happy to help you with all your pottery and ceramic sculpture needs by providing the best customer service and world-class workshops. Visit cornellstudiosupply.com for 20% off the largest ceramic book selection of all time. At Cornell Studio Supply, we are owned and operated for potters by potters.
Welcome to the Tales of a Red Clay Rambler podcast, featuring interviews with culture makers from around the world. This is Ben Carter. I'm going to be your host. If you'd like more information on the show, please visit our website, talesofaredclayrambler.com. Welcome back to episode 538 of the podcast. Thank you all for tuning in. Today on the show, I talk with Theo Uliano, who has worn many hats in his career, including artist, educator, mason, and now kiln wizard. Along with his team of skilled kiln technicians, Uliano services kilns at schools, art centers, and private studios throughout the tri-state area. In our interview, we talk about the questions you need to ask when buying a new kiln, troubleshooting poor kiln performance, and the career arc that led him to be a small business owner. If you'd like to check him out, you can go to allkilnservices.com. Before we get to today's interview, I wanted to thank the folks that came out to the workshop I taught a couple weekends ago at Studio TM Ceramics. If you'd like to take a workshop from me, I'm going to be teaching this summer at UNR Lake Tahoe. That's going to be happening June the 16th through the 20th. So if you're interested in learning about surface design as well as low-fire soda, come on out and join us for that workshop. Without further ado, we'll get to the interview. If you're buying a new kiln, what do you recommend people research, or what information do you think someone needs if they're going to buy their first new kiln?
I assume we're talking about like an electric kiln.
An electric, right? Yep. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. First thing is voltage and phase. That's always like, before you even think about like the size or what you want to find, like voltage and phase. Like most people, if you're an individual in a single family house, you're probably going to be 240 volts, single phase. But you need to figure that out. And if you don't know, call your electrician if you have one, or a electrician will tell you, call us, call kiln manufacturers should help you with that, or companies like mine. But voltage requirements first, because, you get the wrong kiln for the wrong electrical service. Best case scenario, you get one that won't get hot enough. Worst case scenario, as soon as you plug it in, turn it on the first time, it's going to trip your breaker. That's actually not the worst case scenario. Worst case scenario is it'll pull too much amperage through your walls and burn up all the wiring in your walls. So that would be worst case scenario. Yeah, I mean, I guess what I would think of, like the more obvious things, like, the size of your kiln, how high you want to fire. Generally, most modern kilns by the big manufacturers, I don't know. There's some nuance in them. There's some are kind of known for different things. I generally try and keep my opinion on those things out of it for the most part. But people have preferences, like Fords and Chevys and that kind of thing, I don't know. Usually I'll tell people to buy a kiln. Maybe if they're going between two different sizes, go bigger. you'll grow into it. It's much better to, I think it's better to load and fire half empty or like not full rather than like not have enough room. I think that's generally it. I mean, where are you going to put it? You're going to put it in the basement. You're going to put it in an empty room in your house. Do you live in an apartment? It's kind of sketchy if you live in an apartment. I mean, you could put like a test kiln in, I guess. But I don't know. Generally, unless like you own the place, which kind of sucks, I guess. I don't know, insurance stuff. That's another question. Yeah, I guess there's a lot. I mean, I guess that's why companies like mine exist. But venting, if you're in a basement, how do you vent it? You can. You're gonna do it through a window. You're gonna, have us or someone drill through the wall. You know, what are the other big things? Basements have their own challenges. Water, you have water in a basement, you got issues. Um, you know, electricity, like kilns have a ton of electricity going into them. If you get water, don't go near that kiln. Uh, that can be a really, you know, big problem.
The electricity is a good segue to talking about the box. Like most people might have, well, depending on the age of their house, might have a 100 amp box.
Correct.
And if you want to get a big kiln, like let's say an oval, you might
Correct.
need a dedicated circuit that's big. I mean, I don't know off the top of my head, is it a 100 amp circuit for like an oval?
Generally speaking, yeah, your bigger kilns. So, and that's where manufacturers start to get a little different. If you're getting into higher firing, like generally, if you're going cone 6 and below, buy whatever meets your budget, and a 12-sided kiln, which is like a Scut 1227 and L&L E28 or Cone Arts 2827s, right? Those are all the same size, 12-sided kilns. Cone 6 and below, you can buy anything. Actually, Cone Art is actually probably, I would say, the exception. They'll go higher. All of their kilns will. But yes, a big kiln, an oval, big square kiln, like L&L's kilns, some specialty kilns for like crystalline glazes, stuff like that. Yeah, you're going to need a lot of power, at least. If your house is only 100 amp service coming in, which is like typical for most, like unless you like have some giant house. Yeah, if you have a house on 100 amp service and you have air conditioning, central air, and maybe one other big thing that pulls energy, like electric range or something, you probably don't have room for a kiln, or any kiln even, unless it's like a test kiln. Or you're like, you tell people, which is never really a good thing to do, but yeah, you can fire your kiln, but you can't turn on your air conditioning when you're firing because you'll pop your main breaker. It can all be fixed. I always tell people anything can be fixed. Like, do you want more? I can put anything in your house, any kiln, really any. It just costs money, and sometimes it can cost a whole ton of money. But if you're trying to be kind of budget conscious, yeah, these are things to think about ahead of time.
And at some point you might need to put a bigger box. That's what we did when we renovated our house, was to put a 200 amp service, because I knew eventually I would want kilns. Now, granted, I just have a 1027. It doesn't draw a crazy amount of power, but we can run everything. We can run the AC and the kiln and everything at once, which is good. We wanted that.
Yeah, 200 amp service, single family house. You're not living in some giant mansion or something. Yeah, you should have plenty for like a standalone kiln, like a good size 1027, 1227 size kiln. Yeah, yeah, yeah. They're 48 amps, and in these conversations, I never know what to do, whether to get like really in the weeds with numbers and give people too much information or not enough. But I think it's pretty simple. So you look on the side of your kiln, and the tag will tell you the amperage. And when we're talking about these numbers, your circuit breaker, what you call the box. It represents, you just said a 200 amp, and I was talking about a 100 amp. You look at your kiln, it's going to say amps. So the kiln you just talked about, a 48 or a 1027, which at your house I know because I fixed your kiln, and it's a single family house. Is 48. That's a 240 single phase, which means it's 48 amps is what it draws. 48 amps. You look at your box, your circuit panel, and it's a 200 amp panel. That means you have 200 amps to spare. This is going to use 48 of them max, if that makes sense. So you can imagine, if you had a 100 amp service and you're going to use half of all the electricity coming into your house just to fire your kiln, yeah, you're cutting it close.
And am I right in thinking that whatever the kiln that you have is, if it's in a an apartment building, the issue is that you can't necessarily control the power coming into an apartment building versus a single family home. It's really easy to make changes. Is that the real issue with apartments, or is it just straight safety that you don't want to have, compromise your neighbor's safety for your ceramic process?
Yeah, I think more about safety, and I actually think about liability, which, like, given the kind of company that I have, like, liability is something I just obsess over. And and my honest answer is I don't know how that works. We fix kilns and sell kilns. We're not lawyers, but I can kind of make sense of how it works in a house. It's yours, so it's your responsibility. You mess stuff up, you're messing your stuff up. In a building, an apartment that you don't own, I don't know. If I was a landlord, I wouldn't be wild about you having a kiln. Um, so I think more about safety. As far as electrical service, it's probably easier in a building, actually. Um, you're going to have giant panels down the hall. There's usually a ton of power in resident multifamily residential units. So yeah, if you can get your whoever manages the property to say, yeah, you can put a kiln in there, and they're cool with it. It's probably not a huge deal for them to run a dedicated line for your. You'd have to convince me to put the kiln in your apartment first. That's something like it has come up before. It just makes me a little nervous. Then you got venting and things like that, but yeah.
Well, let's talk about the difference between single and three-phase. Single-phase is almost always going to be a residential building versus three-phase. My understanding is that would be an industrial application, or the kiln would be in an industrial building. Is that the right way to think about it?
Yeah, typically, yeah. To simplify it, yeah. I think just about. I've never, I guess in this country, I don't know other countries, but I've never heard of anything other than single phase. Actually, anything other than 240 volt single phase being residential power in standard house. Buildings, usually residential, will be 240, even in larger buildings for residential. But that gets a little funny in cities, especially like when they're converting these old industrial buildings into residences, and maybe early on, the other voltage you hear a lot is 208 volts, which obviously is less voltage. So yes, those are in schools and some industrial buildings, and there'll be three phase, meaning how do I get into this without getting too in the weeds? Single phase has two hot lines coming in, two carries 120 volts on each wire. That your kiln will have a plug. You'll see three prongs on that plug, where it's different than like the plug for your I don't know, microwave or toaster oven. It still has three prongs. One of those is hot, energized. One is neutral, and one is ground. On a kiln, and you see three. That'll be a single phase. It's weird to say single when really you have two hot lines. There's no neutral in kilns, so you have hot, hot, and ground. Three phase is three hots, hot, and ground. But yes, I just went to the weeds a bit. Industrial or commercial, institutional, which is like a ton of what we do. Schools, they have three phase available. You can have, the cool thing about three phase is like with kilns or anything, you always want more power. You can always use less of it. So if you have a three phase, you have a wire coming into a room that you're going to put a kiln into, that, okay, I'm going to put a receptacle on the wall, and it's three phase, say it's 208 volt three phase, but you bought a kiln and like, oh no, it's 208 volt single phase. Easy problem. You just don't use one of those wires. You just cap it off. The electrician caps it, and you just only use two of the phases out of there. Which again, using two hot lines is single phase, not two phase, which is kind of weird. The nomenclature of it's funny.
I wanted to use the school that I teach at as an example of you came to a school and you came to our school and you did an inspection, and you pointed out things that were really obvious that I didn't notice because I was not thinking as a problem solver. I was only thinking, how do we get the students' work through the kiln?
Yes.
And one of the questions that you asked our glaze tech is, well, how long because we had the wrong voltage, how long does it take to fire a bisque kiln? And I can't remember exactly what she told you, but it was a long time, a really long time, longer than it should be, which is one of the indications that you might be on the wrong voltage. So we had a 240 kiln on a 208 power.
Correct.
So can you talk a little bit about problems like this that you see in schools where people aren't necessarily looking maybe at the right solution for their problem?
Yeah, that's why you asked. I thought that was the question you asked. What's the first thing you think about when someone wants to put a kiln in space is like getting the right voltage, because I don't think it would be wrong. So we see, I looked at this data. We see like about 1,000 kilns a year, electric kilns a year is what we see, or at least last year we did 23. And I don't know, I want to say close to half of them in schools, in elementary schools, close to half are the wrong voltage. And it's always wrong in the safe direction, the safer direction. I actually don't think any of it's safe. Um, Certain people say it's safe, but it's fine. But yeah, most of them are 240 volts, just like yours, on 208-volt service. And elementary schools, they never know because, I mean, can you guess why they wouldn't know?
Teachers aren't trained?
No. Well, yeah, that's a whole other thing. That, like, yes, that the teachers, our ed programs aren't teaching teachers how to fire kilns, which I guess I can kind of understand. There's a lot to teach, but no, they're only doing low fire in elementary schools, so you'll never know. Kiln's never going to error because you've not enough inadequate voltage, but you're only asking the kiln to do so much. So it's just going to be inefficient, but it'll still get to O4 or whatever, O5, whatever, like Amoco jar glaze that they're firing in classrooms. If those kilns are in high schools that are firing to 6 or in college programs or whatever, they'll error out. I mean, the wrong voltage kiln may get to like cone 6 like 1 or 2 times, but then it'll be, apparent. And those kilns at Brookdale, I guess they're just bisque kilns.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But with that being said, here's to add in a whole other, and this is kind of fun when we're like diagnosing things. Just because that nameplate on the side of your kilns at Brookdale say 240, doesn't mean that someone along the line, I mean, some of those kilns are like in there like 50 years old. It wouldn't be wrong to think in 50 years someone looked at that and went, oh, let's put the correct elements in. The only thing that changes voltage in that kiln is the elements, the resistance in the elements. So you can put 208-volt elements in a kiln that's nameplate says 240, and now that's a 208-volt kiln. We scratch off the voltage and we'll write it in with marker, or if we're like doing it for one of the manufacturers we sell, we get actual manufactured new ID tags with the correct voltage when we change, and we'll put that on the kiln.
Well, I wanted to ask about elements. How does an element draw a certain amount of voltage versus another? And this is the question. Is it that it's how much it is wound, like how close together the coils are, so therefore you get more distance of hard line in an element, and therefore it draws more? Or what creates more draw out of a 208 versus a 240 element itself?
All right. First, I'm going to be very honest and say, like, we're going to get to the edges of what I'm comfortable about talking about publicly, because
Okay, sure.
not that I'm hiding something, is that we're going to get to the edge of my knowledge. So in my role, I have to balance like what I know about kilns and also what I know about like running a business. And I don't think we're actually running a business for my customers, right? I'm not manufacturing. I'm putting parts in kilns that I buy. Not to say that we don't wind elements on occasion, our own elements, we will do that. But it's not something I get into very, like I said, on occasion. Anyway, that gets into math. And again, I'm going to give you a whole lot of prerequisites or warnings here of how I'm going to mess this up, because I went to art school. I did terribly in high school. I flunked math, even in college. So I'm probably not the right person to ask this question to. All of this is not under the purview of All Kiln Services, my company. If I say it wrong, don't sue me. Actually, you can try. I got lawyers. All right. So generally, I think all elements, at least in your big manufacturers anymore, the kilns that you buy off the shelf, they are made out of A1 Canthal wire. That's the material that is made out of, and they're in different gauges, so different thicknesses. That wire comes in a big long spool. It's measured in resistance, electrical resistance. So for instance, contrast that with copper wire. The goal of copper wire is to have as little resistance as possible. You want to take all of that energy, all those electrons, and move it through that wire efficiently and fast, and you don't want to generate heat. That's why copper is good for that, which is the opposite of, in some ways, of Canthal wire. Canthal wire is to be able to create heat with that energy, to use up that, not transfer it. They want to transfer it into heat energy. With that, gauge of wire, length of wire, how it's wound, all influences how much electricity that element pulls, how hot your kiln is. Yes. So different size kilns have different gauge wires that do that. Canthal wire has a known resistance per foot, if that makes sense. So, you know, I don't know off the top of my head, but say like a 12-sided, I'm going to try and avoid manufacturer's terminology here. Like their model numbers like L&L or Scud or Paragon or whatever. Say a 12-sided kiln, 12-sided 3-section kiln, so it's 27 inches tall, which is, or 10-sided, let's just say a 10-sided, 27 inches tall, which is the kiln that everyone probably has. One of those elements in the manufacturer that has very long elements, the red kilns, I don't know how many feet of wire. There might be 90 feet of wire in one element in that.
Okay.
Maybe more even. I can tell you the mandrel that we wind a 12-sided kiln's element is, I think that's it's a 10-foot mandrel. So 10 feet long, and they're really tight when they're wound, like right up on each other. And then they get stretched after that. So I don't know. I don't know the exact fit. I mean, it's a pretty simple arithmetic to figure that out. I think Ohm's law. Yeah, I say simple, but I'm sure I'd mess it up if you ask me right. Did I answer your question, Ben?
You did. Yeah. What we're thinking about is how does resistance create heat? And you mentioned this, is that because there is a standard resistance, if you turn on the element, which is what your kiln computer does, you'll hear it click on, it turns it on, and that resistance creates heat in a predictable, reliable way. So the computer box on the outside of the kiln is just figuring out how to turn it on, how to turn it off, how to turn it on, how to turn it off over and over and over again as the temperature rises on the inside of the kiln, which is an interesting idea because it's kind of simple in a way, because it's either off or it's on.
They're so simple. I mean, kilns, I mean, I guess I can say this because all I do is look at them every day, but I still think, like, I don't know, when I was in college, I worked on Volkswagen Audis. Like, I was a mechanic for a while, and that's kind of where I learned to like take things apart and fix them. Compared to like when I say a modern car, I'm talking like in 1980 something Volkswagen Rabbit, right? Like, not by today's standards, it's really like a rattle box. Compare that thing to like the newest Wi-Fi controlled kiln. The kiln is so simple. There's like it's a toaster oven. I mean, even they're all very, very simple. Yeah.
When a person has kind of basic knowledge of their kiln and they want to fix something that's broken, what are the things that you feel like that people that own their kiln can fix on their own, or maybe that they shouldn't fix on their own and might need your help to come in and help them?
I guess I have two answers to that. One is, my answer is like, as someone who has a company with insurance and all this stuff, like, it's like unfortunate that it always has to be this way. But I have learned that the purpose of companies like mine, a large part of it, especially because like I think probably 90% of the work we do is in schools. Actually, I think the facilities departments, teachers, some of whom could do this work fine, but really what our purpose is to hold the liability for that work. So if someone gets hurt, that person needs to be covered. That's going to be me or one of my employees. If a school burns down, we're the person who they're going to point the finger at. I kind of assume that risk. And I know that's part of why we get hired, a large part actually of why we get hired rather than them doing it in-house anymore, because of the kind of litigious nature that we're in. With that being said, my official answer is no one should work on their kiln themselves. Absolutely no one. It should be a professional, licensed, insured, competent, qualified kiln repair company. The minute you open a control box, you have a potential for touching live electricity if you do something wrong. I've done it. I work on kilns most days, and I've gotten hit pretty hard. I will say I've gotten hit hard because that's when I get sloppy, because I get confident, overconfident, or whatever. That's my official answer. My unofficial answer is I don't know. I didn't go to kiln school. I wasn't born with a gene that says I can fix kilns. No, you can learn anything. I think anyone can learn anything if they really want to. Um, Generally, what goes bad on kilns? It's three things. What we do every day: elements, thermocouples, and relays. That's like those are the things. My kiln doesn't fire correctly. It's going to have something to do with the elements, thermocouple, or the couples and relays, or somewhere down the line. It's pretty simple diagnosis. Follow the power. You'll find the problem. Let me give you a real answer, Ben. What can most people do? They can change thermocouples. Not a big deal. Thermocouple, unplug your kiln. Unplug your kiln, unplug your kiln, unplug your kiln, unplug your kiln. If you're absent-minded and you're someone who forgets to unplug your kiln, don't go near your kiln. Yeah. Because it can be, what was the analogy I used a little while ago? They're like table saws, right? So a table saw used correctly will never hurt you. You use it incorrectly one time, it can maim you. Same thing I would say working on kilns. Yeah. So like technicians, when we, training with us it's pretty long. I think like at least a year, of training. And it's generally what I say is like, there's some things that you just can't ever make a mistake on. Just can't. Because you'll get hurt. So, but I don't know. Yeah, I just said a whole lot of different things that contradict each other. So sorry.
Well, no, I appreciate the honesty in that variable answer.
Yeah. People ask that though. They say, "Can I do this myself?" And I say, "Yeah, sure." They said, "Well, do you think I could do it well?" You could, or you could do it really badly. I don't. Sure, it's possible. It's definitely possible to do it well.
I think when you came to fix my kiln is a good example. Theoretically, I can change elements, I can change relays, I can do a lot. I can physically do the work. I understand the principles. But there was an issue that happened that if it happened to me, I never would have figured it out, which is that there was a pin going through the wall of the kiln touching two elements. So it was drawing an unusual twice as much when you were testing it as you thought it should. And you could figure out the problem. But that I would have had to call you because I would not have been able to figure that out because I didn't have the experience of doing it every day and I just don't know.
Yeah, dude, Ben, your kiln sucked. I'm just going to be honest with you right now because now I'm not. That was such a that was an afternoon for me because it was like, oh, it's a Scott 1027, elements relays thermocouple. It's like really I could do it with my eyes closed and in like an hour and a half. And it was like me and another technician, Vivian, who was a great technician. It was both of us. It was like, yeah, we're gonna knock this out. And you're killing and we didn't know each other at all then. And I knew it was like Ben, he's like a podcast guy, and Vivian knew about your podcast. So it was like, yeah. And then of course your kiln has to be like the most pain kiln, like the simplest thing, like wasn't it sprayed with like ITC all over it or something? And your elements were so hammered, like breaking them out like inch by inch. Like everything that could go wrong on a very simple kiln did. Like you had sprayed someone, not you, sorry, Ben. Someone had sprayed ITC coating on the interior, right? Which made all your brick like gnarled and brittle. And the elements were super brittle. Like it was like pulling out pieces of like balsa wood. And you're right. When we put them back in, I don't know why. Maybe the brick. Why did we pin it so badly? I'm just gonna be honest. We messed up. We pinned it wrong that we connected an element phase to phase, one hot to another hot with a metal pin. So when we turned your kiln on, the top element glue, bright orange within like 4 seconds. Remember I took that element out and then I put a new element in and it did the same thing. Took that one out, put another element in, and I was like, before we pin it, let's just check it. And it didn't do it. I was like, okay, we're good. Then we pinned it, turned it on, and then it did it again. I was like, okay, how could pins do this? Frustrating as it is, those situations actually kind of get me a little kind of stoked. Like when something kind of goes wrong in that sense, I get kind of like, oh, I don't, you get cocky, like, oh, I've seen this all before. There's no kiln, like I can look at a kiln in like, I don't know, 30 seconds and figure it out. Yours was like, it became kind of a battle.
We'll be right back after a quick word from our sponsors. Today's episode is brought to you by the Rosenfield Collection of Functional Ceramic Art. The collection exists as an online resource for research and inspiration, featuring photos of over 4,000 objects made by over 1,000 artists. The images are high quality and can be used with no permission required, making them a great resource for students and teachers. To find out more, visit rosenfieldcollection.com.
The Bray Clay business is your best source for Bray epoxy, a two-part moldable epoxy intended for post-firing repairs. Working like clay, it's easy to shape, texture, fill gaps, and recreate missing parts. Bray epoxy is sold in tan, white, and black base colors, and we also have a 9-color kit that will allow you to perfectly disguise your repair. Order online anytime at archiebrayclay.com.
One of the problems that I've had with that kiln and other kilns is once you move kilns around, like physically move them around, and I had moved that kiln from another location to this location, and even though I had been very careful, there was some brick damage. And that's one of the reasons why I think that the pinning issue is happening, is that there was some fray around some of where the elements go in. Now, moving a kiln can be tricky. What do you recommend about moving a kiln? Like, I'm talking about like moving it to another house or another school.
Yeah, I mean, like oval and square kilns, just like throw in the trash.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, if it's
Wow.
older than a couple years old, they just fall apart. We'll do it. I mean, we're going to do one for a nonprofit. I think I told them, like, yeah, but we're going to write all over our invoice that like we hold no responsibility because we're going to pick it up and it's going to fall apart and oval. I'm sure the manufacturers are screaming right now as I say that. But to be honest, I don't care. Like, they see their brand new kilns. I see their old ones all the time. It's true. You pick them up, they explode. As far as like a 10-sided kiln, what should you do? Take them apart. That's what like facilities people like. A lot of it is just ignorance. And I mean to say ignorance, not in kind of like a condescending way. So they just don't know. Like, you'll see like brand new kilns will get shipped to a school, and facilities, in an attempt to like be helpful, they'll unpack it and lift the whole thing up, like floor, 3 rings, lid, all in one shot, like 2 dudes or whatever. Like, just grip this thing, and they blow all the brick out the bottom because they hear brick and they think red brick, like it's strong, not soft insulated fire brick. So take them apart, take the control boxes off them, take it ring by ring, take the lids off them. It takes more time, but like, one, you're not like going to blow your back out. 2, and transport each ring separately if you can. The way they, don't flip them on their side. I think it's pretty, well, I always want to say common sense, but we see the gnarliest stuff. But we ship used kilns, like, we sell a lot of refurbished kilns, and I'll package them in the same kiln packaging that new kilns come in, and they're all stacked on top of each other. So if you're going to ship it, that's fine. But yeah, I think take them apart is like the first thing I would say. It's easier on you. It's easier on the kiln.
One of the things that people can't see in their kiln is what's inside the box. So that would be wiring, relays, all of that kind of stuff. When you came to our school, one of the things that you pointed out is that one of our kilns was so old that the technology itself of the wiring is just not, we're like multiple generations past using that style of wiring. So it's not safe because it's not really up to code. So can you talk about like how old, like let's say in 2024, if someone's going to buy a kiln, what's the oldest electric kiln they could buy that they're not going to then be into a different type of technology in the wiring or the stuff that's inside the box?
I know, people are going to disagree with this statement, but it's just kind of how, and I guess that's, yeah. Digital kilns. If it predates digital, like, I guess that kind of happened around 2000-ish, right? 99, 2000, 2001. I would generally stay away from it. I mean, you can convert them and that's fine. But, soft brick, the more you fire it, the more brittle it gets to, and the more kind of it kind of erodes and its insulating abilities decline. So that's one thing. But as far as wiring, I mean, there's some really old kilns like 50s, 60s, 70s that have, insulation wrapped wire, which we won't touch. and that's not to say I haven't like torn out tons of insulation or asbestos insulation in my life, but like it's not a good practice to get into. So yeah, in very old kilns, it's asbestos coated wiring on the insulation. It's undersized wiring, so a lot of things will be of a thicker gauge now, which thicker gauge wire is one, more efficient, two, lasts longer, and runs cooler, which is important. So they're generally built better. It's one of those things where there's a whole lot of like they don't make them like they used to kind of stuff that we hear a lot, and that might work well for like I don't know. I don't know what that works well for in ceramics actually. Like maybe potter's wheels, maybe, but not really. There's like a company that has these really old wheels that I just really don't like. Kilns, it doesn't. I can definitely tell you older is not better for kilns. Cider kilns, there are people that really hate me because we will not work on cider kilns anymore. Well, I will myself, like no, none of the technicians will. For certain artists that I know that are, but generally like the sketchiest stuff we see is cider kilns, like with kiln fitters, like meltdowns, like bending corduroy shells into tacos and like fires. So yeah, digital kiln, you'll be fine.
Well, the retrofitted computer on an old style kiln is something I've seen, and we even had. And one of the issues that we ran into is that because we weren't checking the box regularly, because the box is hanging on the wall, the cord itself was starting to arc into the socket that's on the back of that box that was hanging on the wall. And so once you took it down, I was like, oh God, this is obvious. Like we should not have been using this. But I didn't know because I wasn't checking that setup. So can you talk a little bit about like what you should be checking in your school's kiln room regularly, or maybe a maintenance schedule, just so you can make sure that things are staying safe over time?
Yeah. All this is going to sound like a big plug, but generally annual kiln inspections by a reputable company. Okay. Is if you're in a school, if you're in like a busy studio or art center, or even like, busy paint your own potteries, actually definitely paint your own pottery studios, just murder kilns. So like annual, get a good company. There's not a ton of us, but they're out there, to come do an annual inspection. But in your own studio, every, I don't know, 30 firings or so, unplug the kiln if it has a plug on it. If it's not hardwired, unplug it and look at that plug and look for signs of heat, discoloration, even like subtle ones. Some of the plugs will have, a white plastic backing. If you start to see kind of an orangish color, get a whole new power cord. Don't even cut the plug head off. Definitely don't go to Home Depot and buy like, the whatever plug. I mean, see it all the time, but that's going to melt. The big one is, yeah, like what you just said, unplug your power cord. The other stuff is like falling along the lines of like, I really don't recommend, unless just to the general public, I don't recommend, going in and opening the control box and fishing around. I know kiln manufacturers will yell at me about that. They encourage everyone to take apart their own kiln. I don't, because like, a lot of power in there. But generally, when something goes wrong, it's generally pretty obvious. So digital kilns will give you an error code when your elements are going bad, or if a relay doesn't work. If you press start and you see smoke, that's bad. You'd be surprised, if you see smoke. I mean, I'll come in, or someone will tell me like, hey, I saw smoke coming out of the control box and I saw this large blue flash.
Oof.
So then I like unplugged it, plugged it in, tried it again, and then it did it again, and then I did it again. It's like, oh my God, like that's so gnarly. If you see any of those things, like don't fire the kiln, unplug it. And even like if you don't unplug it, if you something's like, hey, I don't want to unplug that. If like you touch a wire and it feels warm, shut it off at the breaker and call someone that knows, whether it's a kiln repair company, a manufacturer, or even an electrician. Shut it off at the breaker. Like if your kiln's hardwired, turn it off at the breaker. Weird things can happen, like wires get hot, they break, they arc, and like it's not rare for a broken wire to hit the case of a kiln and energize that kiln for a little while. I mean, like the whole kiln. You just touch a kiln, you're going to get shocked. But these things are obvious. You get shocked, that's bad. You see smoke, don't do something. You see a big flash. What's the other one? Don't turn your kiln on if you're a teacher on a Thursday before a 4-day weekend. Don't turn it on that Thursday and come back on Tuesday. Don't do that. Because that'll be the time that a relay stick's closed and your kiln fires all weekend.
And you're going to have a puddle, just a total puddle.
Yes. If half of the work in your kiln turns into a puddle and the other half is fine, that probably wasn't the kiln. It was probably the clay. But no, I mean, yeah, kilns lock on. That's the only sketchy thing about, well, digital kilns. There can be an overconfidence with that controller. They lock on. Again, it's really not uncommon. I mean, there was one a couple of years ago that locked on all summer in a school for like
Oof.
2.5 months.
Wow.
It wasn't crazy hot. It was like, I think 1,100 degrees.
Can you imagine the power though for 2 months?
2.5 months. All the chairs were on the tables. They had waxed the floors. The doors locked, and we walked in to inspect these like 3 kilns. And I went near one, and I was like, "Oh, that one's on." They're like, "Well, no one's been in here since it was August. No one's been in here since June." I was like, "Oh, yeah." And it was like a moon rock inside.
Oh God.
Yeah.
I wanted to switch gears a little bit and talk about your career as an artist and an educator. You have an MFA, you went to art school. As you mentioned, you didn't go to kiln school, you went to art school. But at this point, you're a small business owner that has been, has a thriving small business that's been growing and growing. So can you talk about the transition from full-time teacher or full-time teacher artist into full-time kiln technician business? Like, what was that transition like?
I guess none of it was like super planned. I mean, I'm probably on like plan, like I'd have to go down the alphabet to say what plan I'm on now in life. And it'll probably change again. I don't know. How'd that change? I guess I just have to be honest. I get money, to be honest. It's just money. And also like a bit of failure too. I had in my mind, I was going to try and do the chase after the tenure track teaching job thing. That's what I wanted to do. And I think, I'm pretty comfy saying now that like, I couldn't get it. I couldn't do it. A lot of reasons. Some I can blame outside factors on. A lot I can blame myself, but you don't get everything. So a lot of me transferring out of education is like, I couldn't get a tenure track job, but also like, my wish list was kind of like not tenable. Like I didn't want to move to the Midwest. I didn't want to, like, I wasn't going to jump around for a while. So like, I kind of knew I wasn't going to get that. I wasn't willing to do what it took. So I was doing like, I was an adjunct all over the place, like 4 schools in 2 different states and doing that thing. Parts of it were great. Parts of it sucked in all the obvious ways that I'm sure a million people have talked about. I had a job at a private school in DC teaching, at a private high school, which was really cool. That was a ton of fun. But yeah, and I was making art and I was doing that thing, and I was, I had some traction for a little while. And I don't make anything anymore. I haven't made anything for years. I miss parts of it a lot. Other parts, I don't miss that much. I don't have the same insecurity about like that I really used to have, that I'm not being a good artist or I'm not an artist. I guess like my identity's changed. Like how I see myself, maybe. I don't know. Part of that's because I had a kid, that changes. Everyone talks about it. You have one, it changes everything. It does in ways that you didn't expect. I thought I was totally prepared and I thought about it. I'm 40, so I'm like an old dad, and it still changes things you didn't know. One of the big ones is money. It's a motivator. It's like, I know you're not supposed to talk about that, and it's like totally unromantic in the arts, but like I needed to make money. I feel like I have to make money. And I feel very fortunate in a lot of ways that I've stumbled upon this, that it's still ceramics, it's maybe even ceramics adjacent or whatever, but it's kilns. I think kilns are cool, and I get to like take things apart. I get to have a business, which depending on the day, I think is cool. Some days I think it's the worst thing ever. It's terrible. But building a thing out of nothing, as you've done, on good days feels good. But no, I'll be honest, like it's not a nonprofit. The goal here is profits. We to make money. We want to have a good place for people to work. We want to do things well with integrity, and do it honestly and do an honest day's work. But But yeah, that is the goal. And I'm clear. I want to pay people as much as I possibly can. I want to offer as much benefits to employees as I can. I want to fix things as efficiently and do the best customer service as I can. And with that, I also want to make profits too, which I hope that's not evil. You know?
No, it's practical.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think so. I mean, we all have to live in this world. So yeah. I'll end with this part about that. I do get the best thing about it, and it's going to sound Pollyanna or like hokey, but like most of the customers are teachers, are teachers. Like it's kind of a really good customer base. I've had other businesses that had nothing to do with arts, that were kind of more in like the trades or contracting. And like the hardest part was like, I don't know, people really want to see me or see the technicians when we show up for the most part. We're gonna like fix something and do something that makes their life better, which, usually feels pretty good. It's kind of,
In your career, you're one of the most broadly skilled people that I've met. From researching you, I know that you're a mechanic, a trained mason. You've been an art teacher, artist, small business owner, kiln technician. You understand electricity. Like you, in terms of the trades, you have worked across many different trades. How do you think the work of artists in an art community enriches the world as a whole versus, say, a mason or a mechanic or some of the other trades that you've worked in? Like, is there something special that we can provide the world as artists?
Again, that's another one of those like ask me on the right day or the wrong day questions, And I think if any artist, I think most artists would be on, like if we're being honest, we all kind of feel that way, right? Some days it feels totally, as an artist, you feel totally stupid doing what you're doing, kind of useless. Like this is like, was it Malcolm Davis who did the, Rome's burning and we're fiddling in secret thing? Like sent that to me, which I loved. Yeah, I think we definitely have a purpose. I think I shouldn't say we. I'm not really a part of that. I guess I help foster the arts now. I'm not making stuff, but no, I think it's of course, you have to have these things compared to the trades and all that. Yeah, they're different. I can confidently say it's different. What I do now, there's a lot of elements to the trades, but it's still different. Who I hire are art school graduates or people with BFAs. I think it'll always be that way, except for Maggie, who works in the office. But she's like she manages everything in the company. But she's talented in a million different ways. But she didn't go to art school. But technicians, you have to speak two languages, which also is like a difficult thing. You have to do ceramics and cones and glaze. And why does my bowl look like this? And then also like crimping 12 gauge wire with the right tool. It's a lot. I don't know. Speaking about the trades and arts and like it's so layered, and I'm going to say absolutely nothing in my answer is what I'm realizing. It's like class, it's like money, it's education, and also obviously our country's all kinds of funny right now with what direction one represents, right? But I still find myself in between those two. I think I've always felt that way, that I didn't fall very hard onto the art school line of, I guess, how I was supposed to behave or whatever. And I also certainly don't fit very well into the trade kind of camp of what usually, again, we're generalizing here, which is always dangerous, but it's true of what that kind of means right now. I think I'm somewhere, me and a lot of people who work with me, and there's a lot of us out here kind of fit somewhere in between. What we do is important, yeah, especially like working for schools, K through 12. All of us went to school. Anyone listening to this probably was really into art in school, like even if they didn't go to art school or whatever, something about that ceramics class, it's really important for kids. Get into college and getting out of college and being an artist. I don't know. That's a scarier thing that I'll avoid probably talking about. Because that's so tricky. I don't know. Did I answer any of that?
No, you did. And the question that I'm thinking about is between the trades and the arts, it's both problem solving. So like, let's say masonry, if you were going to go fix something in which you needed to, like if some mortar was messed up and you needed to go fix it, what's it called where you fix mortar?
You're talking about pointing, like brick or stone pointing? Yeah.
Yes. So if you were going to go and fix something with pointing, that's a certain type of problem solving. It's different than, say, problem solving like fixing a glaze. And that's even different than, say, fixing a kiln. They're all problem solving, but I think that the trade you're in teaches you to think in a specific way. But what's interesting with you is that you've learned how to think in all these different ways. So do you have any thoughts on like the way you as a person approach problem solving, having done all these different things?
Well, it's all very flattering first. And I don't know if I would challenge you on most of what you just said, that I haven't learned these things. I haven't really mastered any of them. I think I know just enough that like I still like I can do it and I have confidence. Like, it's like anything else. It's very classic. When I start getting into electrical theory, then I start getting really insecure about what I do because I'm like, I don't understand this stuff. Like if you want me to explain how phases are generated or back at the power generation plants, then I have to sit down and think for a while and I start to feel insecure. So I know enough to like have some confidence to like, oh, I can do that. And that's kind of always been my problem or strength, I guess you could say. Knowing enough to get myself in trouble, but not knowing too much that like many graduate students have, right? You sit there in your studio and you've been reading all this stuff and you've been looking at all this stuff, so you freeze because it's so much. I don't know enough about this stuff to freeze. Um, but yeah, it's problem solving. I did a ton of masonry work. I did like, I'm still renovating, my house. And I think working with your hands is, as much as I'd like to like kind of deny that, I still think there is some kind of I don't know, trying to be articulate here. Something decent about it. I think there's something that you did at the end of the day for a certain type of person. And I fall into that class that it does feel good to know what I did. There's an integrity and honesty and all that. We could go back to the arts and crafts movement with all this stuff those people were talking about. Was it Morris and Pugin and kind of the integrity and material? And I think that is part of it. I think humans doing that. I think it'll always be there. A lot of people make art about it. They're very similar. I don't know how we split these up. Again, I guess we'd get into like class and education, right? So why is a electrician go to trade school, but someone who makes bowls and cups would go to art school?
A lot of it is access. In moving to New Jersey, I've met a lot of my friends are in the trades here, but it's because unions are strong and they train people, like as an 18-year-old, you can apply to be in a union and you're going to be trained and you're going to go out and you might not pass the union test the first time, but eventually you're going to get into some union and you're going to come away with actual skills. Where I grew up in the South, their unions are not strong. So there is not the sense of trade school education, or at least it's structured in a very different way. And it's not as accessible as it is here in New Jersey. So having said that, where I grew up, there was a lot of art schools that were accessible. Almost every university around me had an art school.
Oh, wow.
So I think I went to art school because that's what was available. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, that's wild. I didn't know that. I just, it is such a weird thing. Like I try not to get like, I'll call my mother up after we talk and hit her with some resentment, because it's like, Mom, I did everything right. Remember, like, so Ben, our generation is like, go to college, right? So, my mother did go to college, but like, on my dad's side of the family, I don't think anyone went to college. They're in the trades. My dad didn't go to college. No, my cousins or two went to college, but yeah, I think I'm the only one with my last name that went to college. Anyway, yeah, we did what we're supposed to do. You have to go to college to do or else you're going to be like, you're going to be scum. You're not going to be successful. Your life's going to suck if you don't go to college. And now, right, Ben, everyone's like, college isn't for everyone. No, you guys should really think about the trades. And now I really hear people like of that generation saying like, oh, you should have went to the trades. Why didn't you go? And just like, guys, we were like, it was shoved down our throat. You have to go to college. It's funny how things change. Just 20 years, it's obvious what's so different. No, I don't think. No, it's a tricky conversation. I'm trying to be diplomatic here, but the trades obviously are they're important. They have to. There's a huge deficit now. Like houses and especially skilled trades, or even like more laborious trades. There's not enough people doing that work. And I think it's a byproduct of like what I was just talking about. Like you have to go to school, and now like the generations have come through, and it's like, wait a minute, now no one's doing this work. There are doing this work, but then we get into like immigration and all that stuff, and it's all very tricky. I think it all matters, but there's an elitism to the arts, there's an elitism to academics that really turn people off, and then there's a different mentality in the trades, which are also, and I think I can say this because I've been in both of them. There's a thing in the trades where it's like macho. There's like a lot of that kind of stuff that turns people off. So I understand both sides why it's tricky for people to find their place. Um, and everyone wants to belong, right? So you have to kind of pick. um, so yeah.
Well, I think finding your place is you hit the nail on the head there. Like finding the place in which your creativity, for one, matches your personality, and for two, that there's a financial compensation for your creativity, and that's one of the reasons why our kids' generation will probably get pushed towards the trades so much more than ours did, because the trades you can make $80,000 a year or more as an 18-year-old, as to where like I'm 44. If I add up all the jobs I have, I don't make 80,000, and it's going to be really hard. I don't know what I would actually have to do to make 80,000. This is kind of my goal. Like, what can I do to make this much money? As to where the trades, like I have a cousin who's 18 and he'll be there in a couple years. So I think it's all like timing and generational shift and class, as you mentioned. But arts, in terms of ceramics, we're in an interesting spot because I feel like what we do is closer to the trades than, say, a painting major. I was always surprised the painting majors at the art schools I went to, they were different. Like the way they thought was very different than the potters and the sculptors.
Yeah, certainly. I mean, that's probably I think I used to think about this. It's fun. I get to think about it now talking with you, but like, I think that's one of the things that got me interested in ceramics early on. And like something about it made a little more sense to me, like the physicality of it and like dirty. And it's like, you got shovels and I don't know, it's faster to like get a product to, and the whole functional end of it, it's something that like someone from like me or whatever had kind of hold on to as it makes sense, where, painting seemed different. I don't know. I liked it. I liked painting. I liked drawing. It's originally what I went to school for. But yeah, I think a lot of people are like that with ceramics. I think that there is. It's not painting. It's not pouring concrete. But yeah, maybe it's somewhere. It's not hard on one of those or the other. And I think that works for a lot of us, right? I think it did for me. Yeah. And that's the tableware thing. But I guess that's why some people still think tablewares kind of will never be, which I guess is probably fine.
To wrap up, can you plug the website for All Kiln Services and also the Instagram?
Sure. Yeah, it's just allkilnservices.com. The Instagram, I think, is the same thing. It's just All Kiln Services. We go from New York City to probably DC. We're not in DC much, but we're in New York City a lot. We sell kilns, we fix kilns, we do training. Anything that has to do with a kiln, we'll do it. Gas kilns, all that stuff. Yeah,
and you've got a great section on refurbished kilns that y'all sell, so I hope people will check that out. It's a good, affordable way to go for solid kilns.
Yeah, we sell a lot of those. We give them warranties and stuff. But yeah, you can save some money.
Well, thanks so much, man. This was a real pleasure.
Thanks, Ben.
I'd like to thank Theo for coming on the show. It was a pleasure to chat, and I am always grateful for the work that he did to fix my kiln. It is great to have a kiln that has no cool spots now, which is kind of rare for me, so I really appreciate the work that he's done. I also wanted to thank today's sponsors. That's the Rosenfield Collection of Functional Ceramic Art, Cornell Studio Supply, and the Archie Bray Foundation. If you or your organization would be interested in sponsoring one of our episodes or the Brickyard Network, please get in touch at brickyardnetwork.org. I'll be back next week with another episode. Thank you all for tuning in. If you'd like more information on the artists on the show, or if you'd like more information about the workshops and events that I'll be having in the next couple months, you can follow me on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook under Carter Pottery. Another great way to support the show is to leave me a comment on iTunes. To do that, search Tales of a Red Clay Rambler under iTunes podcasts, and you'll find a page that's linked to our show. Thank you guys for the support.